Welcome to What Grows. It's a podcast where we play with the connection between who we are and how we grow. I'm your host, Noella Mashi. Ellen, I've been thinking about something you've said, that the future of work belongs to those who know how to turn expertise into authority. And the timing of that statement feels urgent right now, especially in the sector I work in the nonprofit and social impact sector. We're facing major destabilization. USAID funding, for example, has been gutted. People who spent careers building expertise in international development are suddenly asking, what now? So, your work coaching independent entrepreneurs feels particularly relevant. And you've spent over a decade advising founders, leading entrepreneurial talent programs, running accelerators, and now building the Ask, which helps people turn what makes them unique into sustainable businesses on their own terms. You were featured in the Financial Times talking about the shift towards mass entrepreneurship, and you've been public about both the possibilities and the tensions, the freedom alongside the isolation, wanting connection while really needing boundaries. And your message is that being yourself actually works. So you help people do deep work around their story, and when they package themselves, it's in your, well, I believe in your words, in the most you way possible. So I'd love to talk about what it takes to build authority when, especially when everything feels uncertain, why talented people struggle to see their own value, and what you're learning about yourself as you teach others to become entrepreneurial and you walk this journey yourself. So, welcome.
Wow, thank you for an amazing introduction. It's so nice to hear the clarity reflected back around the various streams of things that I'm up to and how it all fits together. And I'm excited to delve into how it fits into your world and the nonprofit sector at this urgent time. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, my favorite question, first question, if you could give your life a title like it was a book, what would it be?
Oh, there's something about going after the thing that you want, and that's partly the reason that my company is called The Ask. And it is about asking the right questions to figure out what you want, but it's also about making the ask. I've seen myself track this sort of intentionality around the last 10, 15 years of my life of saying, what am I really focused on in this season, and how do I go after that thing and try and stay quite focused in that ask. So I guess the book would have to play on the title of my business, and would find an angle that makes sense from a marketing perspective. But it really is about looking inward, doing that deep thinking, whether it's journaling, visualization, working with a coach, tapping into your subconscious, and then not just staying in this wishful thinking mode, but actually executing a plan around it. And so the business I've built, the life I've created, it is very much a result of thinking about those things intentionally and going after them. And so
Mm.
I'd love to try and help more people understand that is a process that can be achieved and followed. And I think we live in a world today where, thanks to social media and TikTok and influencers, there is a huge number of people sharing their process as well. So I'm one of many voices who are sort of giving inspiration and helping people
Mm.
create a life on their own terms.
Mm. I think something I struggle with on social media is the fails never really feel like real fails. You know what I mean? Like the
Must over.
vulnerability is, yeah, it's just, it's kind of, so that's tricky. But I think where I have experienced genuine vulnerability in a way that I appreciate and affirms my own journey as well is during one-on-one conversations. And that's part of the reason I like podcasting, is because it's a one-on-one conversation, even though many people listen to it. And
Mm.
I imagine in your coaching practice as well, like there are times when, clients feel real vulnerability. I'm curious about a specific moment with a client where you could see them kind of unable to articulate their own value.
Mm.
I'm wondering this because I think we all need to know what makes accomplished people so like unable to see themselves clearly.
Yeah, great question. I think there's a pattern in the people I coach and I'll try and speak in general terms. Obviously, I'm pulling from a few more recent examples in my mind, but I'll sort of portray them as a whole because there are so many patterns across those people. Those people being highly thoughtful, independent, smart thinkers. They go after things that they want to achieve, but they're also surrounded by influences of other people like them or who are ahead of them, who are achieving great things in the world. And as we just pointed out, the 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 impact of working online means you're often surrounded by other people and what they're up to. And this creates this sort of combination of comparison and FOMO. And we're so close to our own greatness or brilliant ideas that they start to lose a bit of impact. We see and hear ourselves think every single day, and that no longer feels novel or interesting. It feels like obvious. So when it comes to packaging our own beliefs and thoughts and then trying to sort of monetize them, whether that's through being a consultant or a speaker or a writer or a coach, we start to feel like we have to keep going after the next level of insight, of learning, of confidence in order to be valuable or interesting. But actually, we always forget how far we've come and how much we've learned in that process of becoming the person we are. And so I guess my clients struggle with um, it's the impact of being an expert. Like it's actually an expert trap where you take for granted what you know and you think everybody knows this thing,
Hmm.
or the way that they approach their expertise has this unique flavor. The being yourself aspect of what you shared in my introduction, and it's the unique pairing of the depth of expertise and the way that they do it that's what's valuable and interesting to new people. But when you are yourself every single day,
Hmm.
and then you're listening to podcasts or reading books or seeing other people sharing their version of themselves who are often further ahead, it can feel in comparison not as strong as a proposition. And
Hmm.
so we suffer from having great taste. We know what great work looks like, sounds like, feels like. And there's a gap often between the work that we're producing and the work we're capable of producing. But just because there's a gap doesn't mean we shouldn't produce and go through that journey, right? Like my mum is a great person to talk to about this stuff because she knows me so well and she's been following my entrepreneurial journey, and she always tells me, Ellen, your writing is so much better than it was when you started. And I don't really see that difference, and I often think at the start, I just didn't know what I didn't know. And now I know all the things that I'm not doing. And
Hmm.
so it takes almost an external perspective. My mum isn't my coach, but she's a good example of an external perspective to help you see what you are bringing. And so,
Hmm.
as a coach to really smart thinkers who are doing great work, I'm often able to point out the things that they're taking for granted.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to jump ahead actually because I want to talk about that external perspective piece. I remember, I think it might have been a conversation that we had, or maybe it's something of yours that I read, or I
Mm,
can't remember. But the question of what's something surprising but inevitable that you believe, something counterintuitive that you could
mm,
kind of build a message around. And I was so close to the work that I just couldn't I couldn't think of a single thing. And I don't think I'm alone in that. Do you think it's possible to really step into an appreciation and understanding of who you are without that external help?
I guess the interesting things about us or the counterintuitive beliefs we have are always that way because of contrast. So in isolation, in a silo, we don't know what's unique or different or interesting or counterintuitive, right? We only know what we think. And therefore, external perspective is required for that process. Does it have to come through another human that you're paying, for example, a business coach? No. But I do think it requires a peer group, a network, a mentor, a coach, a supervisor. Like it requires external perspective, I think, in order for you to sharpen the beliefs, make sure that they make sense outside of your own echo chamber of your mind, but also being in the world and being of the world, in terms of like reading, absorbing, creating in amongst what else is out there. We have to live in that kind of sea of noise almost in order for us to stand out. And that's the kind of paradoxical nature of it, because if we just stay in our own lane, we just read our own stuff, we just think our own thoughts, we might be a genius and that might be enough and we might be able to drown out everybody else, but that's just not realistic that we would create in that way. So I do think having external guidance, whether it's somebody to proofread your work or give you sort of feedback or edits before a piece of writing goes out, or whether it's somebody to help hone your beliefs and make sure that like you've been tested on them, almost like an interview, or whether it's a sounding board as you build your brand or you build your product suite, like these are really powerful places to invest your time or your money, because everything that we do in business is like is art, but it's also, a sport almost. And art and sports are a good example of places where, yes, they're solo. Often you have the artist or the sports person and the business person being quite independent, but they always have teams around them, whether they're in studios or theaters or in teams, and I think business is a team sport. Absolutely.
Hmm. Hmm. And so, yeah, tell me about that community piece of the ask, because I know you do one-on-one coaching, but you also have kind of folks growing together.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what does that look like, and why did you decide to have people working together in that way?
Yeah, well, a lot of the clients I work with are independent consultants, coaches, solo kind of operators, and therefore that can be a lonely road. Having me as a coach is great, but having other people to see and work with regularly is obviously of huge benefit when we don't have teams and organizations, or many of my clients don't work in offices or co-working spaces, so it really can be quite a lonely path. The community and loneliness aside, I think the value of working with other people helps to manage expectations about your journey as well, like seeing other people on the similar path, similar timelines, the ability to say, okay, they're struggling with this thing as well. It's not just me. Their LinkedIn post isn't getting reach, or their offer isn't selling like hotcakes or whatever. And obviously, the reverse as well, the positives can happen and you can be really inspired and cheered along by other people's wins. And so that's the other piece. And then the third piece, I think, that relates more to the work that I do specifically around authority building is that peer effect of helping sharpen ideas and perspectives and beliefs. Because a lot of the people I work with are selling something quite intangible, something quite almost esoteric or quite complex. And so they are suffering from the expertise trap again of like knowing so much about their field that they forget to almost translate those ideas into more everyday jargon free terms. And so having somebody like me as their coach is great, but it's not realistic or affordable to need to speak to me every time you want to put something out there, right? And so that's the value of Authority Club, which is the community, learning community that I run, helping individuals build authority, sell more of their services and stand out. And so they're able to meet one another and share ideas and read each other's work or whatever peer sort of support functions that are available there.
Yeah, I find that incredibly useful just among friends of mine who are also on this journey of building their own business, their own kind of advisory practice. One of the exercises that I've been working on recently is a needs assessment, just trying to understand what potential clients need, but in their own
Mm,
words,
mm,
especially in, as I mentioned, this changing landscape. And it's been difficult to kind of get enough data to come to some really clear language and clear conclusions, but I've also only been doing it for like 3 days. So
wow.
I'm the sort of person that without the peers around me to say, yeah, it takes time, people will reply to your email in a week, whatever it is, I start to get really down on myself, and then that spiral can
Mm,
actually impact the rest of my work and the rest of my goals as well. I also think there's something, for lack of a better word, um, divinely ordained about some of these like ideas and callings that we're meant to
yeah,
put out into the world, and there's that external push as well. So I really find it interesting that you use the word authority, not personal branding, not necessarily thought leadership, but you say authority. Now, what does that mean to you that those other terms don't capture?
absolutely. To me, personal brand is everyone has a personal brand, whether or not you kind of are aware of it, right? And in more marketing terms, your personal brand tends to be quite a holistic thing. It's kind of like the visual side of things, the language you put out there, the platforms you're using. And in that case, it's similar, but an employee can have a personal brand and very much a creator influencer who's selling entertainment has a personal brand. And that's really the majority of how they get attention. Thought leadership and authority, I guess, are pretty similar. The difference, I don't want to get into semantics to the point that I might change my mind on those semantics as the terms evolve, as the market evolves, the terms sort of evolve with them. But I think the reason that I went for authority is that authority can be quiet. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be that you have all these followers or that you're on stages. Thought leaders to me conjure up an image of somebody who really is a world stage presence and has this mass following versus an authority. Like if you're being paid a really good rate from a client to hear from you, to learn from you, to see your ideas, they've absolutely put you on that authority position, but that doesn't mean that you're famous. So I like this idea of like being famous in your field because you're an authority in something specific. And that's the key really to authority. It's you've chosen a lane, you've committed to something, you're clear, it's credible, it's compelling. These are the 3 C's that I talk about in kind of authority positioning, because if you're not compelling and interesting, it's hard to gain attention enough to sell services or sell attention. If you're not clear, maybe you're kind of changing what you're doing too often, that it's not clear or you haven't found the language. And then being kind of consistent is another one. So these are the terms I use, and authority can compound over time. I think one of the points that maybe turn people off or at least get their attention when I start talking about authority as well. A, isn't authority bad? Who am I to want to be someone powerful, or authority is manipulated in today's world? We see many authority figures committing horrendous crimes even, let alone not looking after their people. So that in itself can be a bit of a push-pull dynamic with the word. But ultimately, what I'm referring to is authority in your field as a voice who has expertise around the subject matter that you're referring to, and that allows you to command a good rate for that expertise from
Mhm.
clients. So it's very much, I built this term very much in context of the work that I do and my people who I serve are doing. It's like coaching, consulting, independent practices. And without it, it is hard to kind of stand out, and it's hard to portray the depth of thinking that you probably do have. And so that's hopefully answered your question to an extent.
Yeah. Yes, yes it does, and it makes me want to bring in the you side of it, the personality, I guess, or the
Yeah.
personal piece that goes with the authority. What does it mean, and how do you discover what you even like what it means to package those two things together? What are you even packaging?
So I almost imagine a blank slate of paper and you draw a line down the middle, and it's like, which aspects of my personality am I actually going to shout about and share quite publicly, externally, and which aspects of me or my personal life stay that way, stay personal. And so it's not about saying, look, every single thing I've ever done, my warts, my alls, my fears, my vulnerabilities are going to be part of my authority. No, it's still an act of presenting yourself, like a piece of art in an exhibition, or the best slide deck, not the unfinished draft. So we still need to kind of curate our personality and our you-ness, but it's also using the true definitions of those things rather than what we want to be. So if we want to be somebody who is, I don't know, sharp and crisp and polished, but in reality we're a bit more scrappy and creative and disorganized, then let's not fake it till we make it just to think we need to be a certain way to be, fully booked or have authority. So it's going, okay, well, who am I really, and what traits am I best known for? Where do I add value in a unique way than a competitor doing the same thing might add value? Like, what's the unique flavor almost? There's this article that I often share with clients, and it's like an ice cream cone with 3 different balls on it. And it's like, what are the combinations of flavors that you bring to your work? You're not one thing, So in my case, I'm very known for kind of being quite strategic and thoughtful around plans, timelines, being quite future oriented. But I'm also quite personal in terms of I always make things about the individual and personalize them. And and really slow down from that perspective and ask questions. It's not just like, here's the plan, go execute it. It's always iterated with the individual, and we check in on every front. Does this fit your personality, your kind of bandwidth, and so on? And then there are other parts of my personality, I'm sure, that I've put into my work. Like, I share quite openly what I'm doing around improv or the gym or travel, and these are things I choose to share. But there are other things I would choose not to share. Um, and so, one of the reasons for sharing personal things alongside authority is that people are still choosing us as an individual to work with and become friendly with in many cases. We want to work with people we want to work with, especially in an age of AI. We don't need coworkers all the time. We don't need colleagues or service providers. We want to be sociable and we want to enjoy our work. So we will choose people that we like being around ultimately. And if we have points in common, points of connection, shared values, shared vision for the world, shared hobbies, interests. These are just little points of connection that we can really lead with when we're trying to sell ourselves and allow other people to see themselves in us and connect with us on and have points of reference, in a way that if you just talk about work and you just talk about your authority, sure, you might be looked up to, but people want to connect with you as well.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
that's the kind of process I help my clients think about both sides of their work and their life.
And both very intentionally, not just what
Mm.
am I thinking today, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, whoops, I feel like I was too open on the internet, but actually, what are the things that I want to put
There's a
out there? I
risk.
really like
There's a
that.
risk of
Yeah.
that for sure. But
Ye-
I think over time you it's like practice of anything. You start to be like, okay, I'm really comfortable sharing these things, or I have this framework for what I will and what I post about, and I can refer to that, for example.
mhm. I for me for sure, but as I watch other people also growing on this journey of independent consulting, I feel like the first step, the foundation, is a conviction that I actually have something of value to add to my clients that they couldn't necessarily do on their own, that I have a interesting, useful way to present it, and that it's great. Yeah, to your point, it's great to work with me. And without that deep belief that I'm doing good work, it becomes too much of, okay, imposter syndrome. And
Mm,
also, I need to fold them into like working with me, which is just not sustainable. And
mm,
so, I think and confidence building is a big part of the journey of entrepreneurship. How do you discover, how do you confirm that this is, and how did you do it for the ask, that this is
mm.
what you're meant to be doing and you do it well?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up because it's such an underspoken about aspect of this work. We see other people, you know, pop up a new brand or offer and sort of sell it and seem successful, but we don't see the days or nights of tweaking it, of practicing, of tweaking and getting ready, I suppose, getting ready to be in the arena, to quote Brene Brown. So the act of feeling confident, there are many schools of thoughts around what makes someone confident enough to do this work or just have confidence in general. And know so much of it is about our upbringing and can lead very much into the sort of therapeutic space. And I'm not a trained therapist, and therefore when I see clients struggling with confidence, what I'm able to do is sort of understand maybe some of the roots of it. But rather than try and solve deep seated things, my approach, and this is very much a personal approach, and other coaches might have a different one, is typically to try and make a plan to take action. Because as soon as you start taking action, you start to see yourself in motion and see yourself doing the thing that you always thought only confident people do that thing. But with my support, my clients are then putting things out there or sharing things or making requests and seeing themselves take baby steps along that journey, not trying to wait until there is a finished product, but actually, yeah, action breeds confidence. And so
Mhm.
I don't have a magic pill to make you feel like some really confident person. What I have is a unique way of helping people, A, remember their uniqueness, their greatness, and B, know the exact steps to take to start to see results in their business. Because so much of confidence is a knowledge gap. We actually just don't know what it takes to become that person. So we think it should just like drop into our conscious and then we should just be doing it. But in reality, most of the clients that I work with are like, I actually just do not know the steps to take to get there. And that's where I come in and also help them but build that self-belief along the way with affirmations and kind of sharing back to them, reflecting back what I see in themselves. But if you're not working with me and you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I want to have some of that for myself, I would say like start with a list of characteristics of things that you're really great at and collect testimonials from clients, collect wins. I screenshot every nice thing people say about me and I put it in a file because we need that evidence to go back to. We need to kind of be able to big ourselves up. Like you said, Noella, when you get in your own head, it can spiral and it can kind of take you out of the game for a long time. So we need to have practices to kind of choose ourselves. That's another book title, potential, like choose yourself. I think there's already a book called Choose Yourself. So the point is like, how do we commit to becoming the person we want to become? It's not going to happen in a vacuum. So get external's perspective and like kind of big yourself up, but then take action. And that is the sort of three things I would suggest. And you asked me about my own journey. I was in the sidelines waiting to do what I did for a few years, actually. I was sort of tinkering at weekends and I had a business coach even when I still had a job. And we didn't get anywhere really. But when I finally decided I was fed up of my own BS, I then really doubled down on like, what do I need to do to become that person? And a lot of it was knowledge building, gathering information. I was reading a lot, I was absorbing a lot of information. But then a lot of it was action taking. So committing to the coaching qualification, committing to investing in a business coach who was a bit more at the level I needed them to be. These are the things that was actually, how do you have to be willing to sacrifice or invest in something in order to get a result. We don't just suddenly get a result one day because we wake up. We have to create space in our life and say no to things, or again put time or money as an investment down to sort of change something. And so I think you have to work on all those pieces and figure out your unique kind of makeup and what are the pieces that make you feel more confident. Is it actually spending time with friends or in nature or singing in the shower? Like these are little things, but almost having your own kind of recipe for how to feel good and then going from that place into your work. Because if we go from sitting on the couch, doom scrolling, eating crisps and feeling kind of sorry for ourselves, and then we try and put something out there online, in the next minute, we're just not going to be putting out the right energy. We have to work on building that personal conviction and energy and being in the kind of the presence and the power of the person what we want to be ultimately. So
Mm.
that's a a bit of a ramble for you, but yeah, that's how
Yeah.
I would approach it.
Yeah, that really resonates. Something that my partner was telling me because I was talking about all the stuff that I feel like I have to do in building the business was just you want to do this work because you find it meaningful and you want to do work that you actually love. Make sure you're choosing to do stuff that's sustainable.
Mm.
Don't and so when you talked about start by feeling good, whether it's taking a walk, singing in the shower, and then go into whatever your product, your output is, that resonated with me because I also think that product and that process needs to be something that makes you feel good. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it has to be rewarding in some shape or form.
Yeah,
Not
for
many
sure.
people, not everyone likes to podcast, but some people are really good at, I mean, and let's talk about authority letters, like long form writing
Yeah,
or whatever vlogs. Like, what is it that actually like lights you up, and try and build your business around that, because to me that's also part of like being the most you that you can be, is
exactly.
like the format, right?
Exactly. Follow your energy. Like if, as you pointed out at the start of our conversation, you get a lot of energy from one-on-one conversations. Sure, that might not scale, but podcasting is a perfect way to say, look, this is actually me in my element, and I'm going to share that, and hopefully back like things will come back to me. I'll give you an example. I was just really decided to work on building a YouTube presence back in 2023. I invested in a course, I got a studio, I got a camera, um, not at super high expenses, but they were still mini investments. And I committed time on my calendar and I did it. And it was fine. Like I did some good videos, I paid an editor, but every single part of the process drained me. It drained me going to the studio. It drained me setting up the camera. It drained me reading from a script. I'm much more of a like improv person. I actually, do improv. So um, and it drained me going back and forth with the editor and like all these things. And I was just so like, "Oh, I just don't know if this is me, you know?" Whereas if I compare that to writing, which is a very different medium, and I'm, by the way, looking at YouTube again in a different way, I think, in the future. But point being, how do you follow your wiring? What gives you energy? I've always been a writer, a journaler. I love sitting behind a laptop and having my headphones on and writing, and so it's like, okay, if I can commit to doing that regularly and what I'm writing is relevant to my business, then surely that's going to give so much back to me over time. And I think what people forget is the act of compounding, not just skill compounding, but also putting things out there and building that body of work and allowing other people to say, you have to listen to Noella's podcast. There's so many amazing episodes. You have to go on Ellen's blog. There's so many in the archive, or YouTube, whatever it is. If you try and just do a tiny piecemeal, a bit of everything over time, you don't really get known for something. And that's really what authority building is. It's about being known and developing your craft. Because I have a client who is really great on TikTok and Instagram and short form, and that's so not my skill set. And I watch her and she just keeps getting better, month on month on month. And that's because of the decision to commit to a lane, and then that having the ability to have those skills compound. So yeah, just echoing what you said, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, compounding effects. And not like immediate success necessarily, but following your
Not always.
wiring and knowing the later. Yeah. So this is a tension, especially in the nonprofit social impact sector, that people wrestle with. I wrestle with. Um, Sometimes, the through line that connects all the things that I am or want to put out there can be contradictory. For
Mm,
example, I care about impact and serving organizations where the clients can't necessarily pay for the services. I also want to be paid well for the valuable work that I do.
mm,
So, how do you like impact and financial kind of not even necessarily stability, but actual success are two
yeah.
tensions. There's also other tensions, like, I'm, people who are deeply analytical, but also quite creative. How do you advise people to like, how do you move through that tension?
Yeah, I love this question. And I think it's a really core tension to a lot of what we're trying to achieve in the world, which is I want to do this thing, but the world or the market maybe doesn't reward me for that thing, or maybe just comes at some sort of like contradictory term. For example, yeah, impact work, wanting to do good for the world, those people not having the budget, you wanting to be paid well for the time and energy that you're putting in. And so I'll give you an example from my business. I believe the world of work is becoming more and more entrepreneurial. More and more people are having to learn the skills to work for themselves. I'm very well equipped to support someone in their early-ish journey. And I have a huge number of people, for example, on my email list who are very new in the entrepreneurial journey. And I have people who've been doing this thing for 10 years plus as well, who I work with. But the point I'm making here is there's a tension between the income I would like to be able to charge being 5, 6 years into my coaching journey and the income an early stage entrepreneur has, right? And so your tension is a similar one. It's like, how do I marry the desire I have to serve this person with the personal need I have? And therefore, I always say, like, the obstacle is the way. And that's a Ryan Holiday book, but it's something I think about a lot. It's like, where there is tension, what is that inviting you to explore? What is the opportunity that without the tension you wouldn't be looking into? So that's where, for example, group coaching, this is like quite an obvious example, but group coaching and group membership programs become the more obvious choice for me to build my business model around than trying to either keep my prices super low on one to one and then be fully booked and burnt out, or go to a different target market and not be able to offer anything to people who are newer in their journey. And so for you, it's like, how do you address that tension? Well, probably there's some sort of funding, positioning thing that you need to look at around who is funding this work and where is that income coming from, or how am I compensating myself, and is actually my income coming from different work streams? And so I don't think we can, just because we want to do something doesn't always mean that the market will accommodate that thing. And so we have to be savvy. If we choose to create our own business or our own income stream, will alone isn't how we'll get there. We have to be strategic and think about things, um, yeah, in context. We're always working in context.
Mm. I like that the obstacle is the way. That, yeah, I need to sit down and reflect on that a little bit more. I know that in my space, for example, especially after USAID shut down, etc., and things were going poorly, people were taking on fractional work, for
Yeah.
example. And so one organization can't pay me everything, but five together, and I do similar work for them, could potentially work. I'm sure there are, yeah, interesting products that every nonprofit that's in an earlier stage might be interested in. And how do you package that? So I think that, yeah, it is an invitation to be creative about pricing and products.
Where else can you find leverage, in that either product suite or in the ecosystem in general? Because your financial needs, to live in this world are not drastically going to change. But how you create your business and how you set it up, you can be infinitely almost creative with that. And so that's where we have to be patient to I almost see it as like figuring out an answer to an equation. We test things, we experiment with different types of client or business model or approaches or language to describe our work, and then suddenly things click. And I notice
Mhm,
this kind of momentum build when people find that click moment. But
mhm.
inevitably, that only lasts a period of time because things will change again. You will change, the market will change, your clients will change, the economy will change. And then you almost have to go through that sort of iteration, almost like R&D or product development process on yourself and on your business to then find the new version of the click. And that's why it's so rewarding, but it's also tiring. And to your point, we have to be able to do things that are sustainable, um, because it's so easy to just throw everything at your business, throw loads of time and money and not get much back. And if you really don't see a result after a while and you're also doing things that are outside of your wiring or requiring you to burn out, yeah, it's just not a recipe for long-term success.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so let's talk about long form writing, which is something that
Yeah,
you enjoy doing and
yeah.
you have said is a foundation for authority. These days, especially sitting down to write something real, not just like putting in a prompt into AI and copy pasting, it's getting harder. And people don't necessarily remember the value of that. Like, what is the advantage of pushing yourself in
Mm.
this way to write long form?
I'll invite people to see this as an invitation if it feels like one, and if it feels like something that they're not at all interested in, to take their own intuition and say, "Look, this isn't for me right now." Okay, so for the people who feel invited to do long form writing to grow their authority, I believe it is a really worthwhile pursuit because so much of what I've seen is that people choose themselves to start a business or start a practice around a subject matter or an agenda that they are really invested in. But those ideas and those belief systems live in their head and almost obscurity or like vagueness. And the act of writing it down is what formalizes their thinking, not only for themselves, but then for their clients and then for their potential clients. And so, yes, you can do this in other mediums, but long form writing, I believe, those who commit to long form writing regularly are disproportionately rewarded by like the market because people see them, sorry, as a thought leader in the sense of like they have proper things to say at length. It's not just length for the sake of length, but hopefully strong arguments and case studies. And it is SEO kind of proof, it's algorithm proof, it's your own domain that you can store long form writing on. It doesn't necessarily live on a tweet or a social media post, it probably lives on your blog or a newsletter platform. And so I I help people with long form writing that grows their business essentially. And I do that in my one-to-one work. And I also have a cohort running right now called Authority Letters. And inside Authority Letters, the members are committing to writing what I call their hero piece. And that's one piece of content that really explains their belief, their one big idea that they're working on as almost like the question that their business is answering. And it calls in aligned clients to hopefully work with them in the year ahead. Ideally, a hero piece is something that your business really stands on for a year or so. It's not a fleeting flash in the pan product. It's it's almost like a product marketing asset that will live proudly on your website and call in aligned clients. And I just think writing is a medium that everybody can read. Not everybody can read, but most people are willing to read something in a way that they may not want to watch a long video, or they just, might be able to. And the act of writing for the producer, for the creator, is free compared to, again, like when I was trying to grow on YouTube, there was just so many moving pieces to that. You really do not need much to get writing, and that's why I'm really an advocate for it. But mostly I'm an advocate for it because it's the only thing I can point to that I've been consistent in the last 5 years of growing my fully booked practice, and so I'm well equipped to help people with that. I'm not a writing guru, but I'm capable of helping people figure out what to write, how to write it, and where to publish that writing to get customers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've read some of your pieces and they really, really help me think about my own business. I think that point about the hero piece is the question that your business is answering. There's a few
Mm,
steps before that, which is, do you even know the question that your business is answering? Because coming to starting a business from a reactive place, which is
mm,
I am suddenly out of a job
yeah.
and there are no jobs in the market, I got to start a business,
Mhm,
means there's not really a clear direction that you're going.
mm,
What
mm.
is the work that needs to happen before you can write your hero piece?
Yeah, great question. And I wouldn't say anyone should join authority letters, right? It is probably for somebody at a certain point of their business where they know really what they're selling, they know who they're selling to, they know what they're offering, but they're looking for a piece of marketing that will maybe accelerate their customer acquisition. Ahead of that, I think of it more of like product development. So like going back to who am I? What do I have to offer? How do I want to sell my time? How do I want to deliver my time? Do I want a team? Do I want a brand? Do I want it to be my own name? Those are the sort of fundamental basics. But then if you're selling something intangible like consulting or coaching, and you want to be known for a specific area of expertise, i.e., a framework, a methodology, a sort of subset of, I don't know, for example, a therapist might double down on relationship dynamics in heterosexual couples. Like that's a specific compared to I'm a therapist for anything that could come up. And there are obviously so many examples of that. Like you yourself have the social impact nonprofit angle, and then there'll probably be layers of specificity that come into that, right? Once you've kind of narrowed in, almost like chipped away at that positioning, you are faced with almost a question or a belief that you're trying to put out into the world. I believe the world should be like this. That's kind of the vision statement. I believe entrepreneurial, multifaceted people should be able to build a career in a business that suits them and not have to fit into a narrowly defined job role that is unfulfilling. That was one of the starting points for my business. So how do I, and that's obviously evolved since that point into more of around, okay, actually it's more than just being able to pay yourself. It's about getting into the craft and the depth. And that's where authority comes in. And that's how you stand out in a more entrepreneurially kind of busy environment. And so I would say to anybody who hasn't got that clarity of question yet, that it's not something you need to start. What instead you need to start is a willingness to learn and listen to your customers and hear patterns. And therefore, I mean, sorry, just to go back a second, that's a pattern I observed being in my employee role. I met thousands of individuals in their career paths as a recruiter and then working in the startup accelerator, helping founders who were trying to start businesses, and saw those patterns and felt like there was a sort of service that could help people way beyond what like university career services were providing or bad online information. So you might have something that's already pushing you to want to solve a problem in the world. But if you are being pushed out of a job and you're acting reactively, just start off selling your skill that your job really was paying you to do, and start to seek patterns and beliefs that your clients have, and then think about, okay, what is it that I can offer that I don't see others offering? Or how can I position myself as the alternative to the status quo? And over time, that question will evolve. And you do not need that question to start. You need to learn the skill set of actually selling yourself and being paid to deliver value without an employer. That's a huge skill set. And they say that like the first 50K of revenue is really about that skill set. and beyond that, you can kind of develop more of that expertise and thought leadership persona. But to try and expect yourself to have that day one, I just think is almost missing the point of like just getting the reps in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so and then we talked about being yourself. You said being yourself works. Like that also comes into it with your clients and with selling yourself. Like what did you personally have to experience to arrive at that conviction?
There is a history of working in recruitment and executive search and really analyzing the people who were successful. And they were clear on what value they offered from a skill set perspective, but they were also clear in their like, okay, if you're going to hire me, you're going to work with me. Here's who I am and here's who I'm not. And yes, that will turn certain people off, but it will also, like a magnet, attract others. And the same exact concept applies in business because when you observe somebody selling something online or in person and you don't really know what they stand for, you can't really describe their vibe, you can't really tell you what they do that's different, or there's nothing really kind of unique about them. It's really hard to get excited or refer them or feel like compelled to learn more about them. And I think we have to remember that business building, again, it's a bit like art. It's a bit like having a product, and you are the product often if you're selling yourself as a consultant or a coach, and you need to be memorable and you need to be sticky. And how do you do that? It's like choosing something that will be loved or remembered. And the best thing to choose is what comes naturally to you. Again, it's not just faking something that you aspire to be. Yes, we can like dress for the job we want, not the job we have, but we should also lean into like who we are at our core because we're made. I believe that we are made in a certain way to be who we are in this world, and that the more we can tune into that, the more sort of fulfillment we'll feel creatively, intellectually, the more aligned we'll feel. And so it's our job to almost learn about ourselves and then be who we are and then turn that into the thing that we want to be spending our time doing. And I just don't think there's a more sustainable way to live and to work than tuning into who we are. And that the difficult thing about this process is that we have to, again, get external perspective, but also recognize the market context that we're operating in. And sometimes make decisions that are strategic about, okay, I'm going to lean into this trait a little bit, maybe more than I might with my family, because actually I've realized this is the trait that people are recognizing me for and makes sense in a business context. Or I might love doing this thing, but there's no real money in this thing and I need to pair it with something else. Right. So this is where I used to be so naively optimistic about how much we could just be ourselves and that would be enough. But I think the more I see this play out, the more I recognize how much the market is, we live in a capitalist society, like it does dictate what we can actually achieve. And unfortunately, people need to be able to like figure out a way to make money without relying on an employer all the time, for example, or a government benefit. Therefore, we have to kind of play the game a little bit. But I think if
Yeah.
you can play the game, again, aligned to the things that you are naturally and that you enjoy doing, you're just going to have a much more long term success.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I love that nuance. It's just realistic. There are certain
Mm.
traits that work better and should be
Yeah.
emphasized. So, my last question for you is just kind of looking forward. Given your beliefs and the work that you've done to date, like if the ask is wildly successful,
Mm.
what mark will it leave on the world? What are you hoping to achieve with this business?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something about this mission that other people with a mission experience as well. Like, if I'm successful, it will no longer be a need to talk about this thing. Meaning, I would love to see a world where people get to be themselves, they get to be paid doing what they love, and they get to kind of have autonomy over those decisions and have a really fulfilling, creatively and intellectually fulfilling business that's built around who they are. Right? That's the kind of wishful dream. And in the future, if everybody's doing that, that's not just because the ask existed. I would have been one of the players and the influencers in the future that created that, And so I feel like I'm contributing to a big general direction of movement. And there are many others who are sharing similar beliefs and doing similar work in my space who I feel like we're part of this kind of a rising tide lifts all ships, you know? There are obviously specifics I'd love to see happen for my business, but from a general, how does the world look if I'm successful? I think I've probably said it in that statement.
Mm, mhm. Is there anything I should have asked you but didn't?
Good question. You know, I'm kind of grateful we didn't get into like the specifics around things like social media and newsletters and marketing. And those are really big questions people come to me about and I can help with. But I think what we've talked about today, I would describe as the more evergreen stuff. What's not changing. And I just don't think that what I've said today, a lot of it will be that different in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years time. And that's really important to me to be able to share that kind of work in my writing or in my thinking that I don't see changing anytime soon. And people get so bogged down in the like, okay, but what's the best hook? What's the best platform today? What's the best blah, 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 that they forget to do that more grounding work that we've talked about today, which is going inward, thinking deeply, deciding what you want to be known for, committing to your beliefs, committing to the craft, staying in a way that's sustainable. And so yeah, there's so many directions today could have gone, but I'm happy it went in this one.
Yeah, so am I. I learned so much from this, and I'm going to revisit that first. I don't know if it's your hero piece, but it's like how to build an authority led business. I
Yeah.
really, really appreciated that. And if it's okay, I'll link that as well in the
Yeah, that's
when I
definitely
put
one of
this
my
out.
hero
But
pieces. I've got a few now, but that's probably the core one to share for sure.
okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for this,
Thanks,
Ellen.
Noella. It's been a pleasure. I'm excited to keep chatting with you. I love what you're up to as well.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate the show. It really makes a difference. I'm also always looking for guests who enjoy meaningful conversations. If that sounds like you, send me a message with what you'd like to talk about, and I'll get back to you. Thanks for listening.